In this video, I'm going to share with you some of the top lessons I've learned as an entrepreneur that I want to pass off to you guys, especially if you're someone who is beginning your entrepreneurial journey or someone who's already getting started, but you want some of the best tips so you don't have to make the same mistakes I did. So diving right into some of the top lessons I've learned as an entrepreneur. Now, I've been an entrepreneur for many years now. Just a quick background, right? I started my career doing tech sales at Oracle, transitioned into being like a sales B2B influencer, teaching people skills about sales and selling online courses and coaching, and even moving into Web3 and crypto and NFTs and that nature as well. I've done a number of industries, mainly involving things around technology and sales. And by working in different industries, like working in like marketing, helping people with services, helping people with crypto and selling technology, what I've actually learned is that the first tip is it's all about picking the right industry. The reason is because if you think about it, a lot of you guys here are probably people that have to sell something in some capacity, whether you are a coach, consultant, an entrepreneur, a small business owner, or maybe you're a salesperson, right? You got to sell something. Every business needs sales. Now, even if you have a very good sales skill set, the amount of money you actually make is going to be determined by what industry you are working in, how well that industry is performing, whether it's going up as a growing industry or if it's a dying industry, and also which company you work at within that industry. So I'll give you an example. You're selling advertisement in print newspaper, right? Whether it's a newspaper or a magazine. Well, there's not as much people reading the newspaper. There's not as much people reading physical magazines. So if you are selling advertising space on these platforms, right, which is just print, most likely it's going to be very difficult. People are going to say, hey, you know, our budget for printed mail is not that high anymore. We want to move over to Facebook. We want to move over to Google, TikTok, Instagram, and things of that nature. So even if you are a killer salesperson and maybe you're making a good living, because the industry is dying, you're not going to make as much. Now, if you switch gears and you say, okay, you get the same salesperson and you apply that selling skill set into a growing industry, let's say they are selling ads for TikTok, right? Let's say they're a sales rep at TikTok or Instagram, and they're selling ads to corporate clients who want to spend a lot of money on these platforms for advertising. Because they have a good skill set, that's where the market is. There's a lot of demand there, and people are willing to have big budgets because they know they can make some kind of return on investment by buying these advertisements on these platforms. Then that salesperson who just happens to be in the right industry, in the right position at the right company, is going to make so much more money than a guy selling print advertising. Even if you get the same person with the exact same skill set, the results in how much income they actually make is going to be wildly different. So that's why as an entrepreneur, what I've realized is you don't want to just jump into any industry just because your friend is doing it or you watched one podcast and this guy's doing it and he seems like he's making a killing. You have to really study the markets and understand where the puck is going. You know, are you moving into an industry where it's actually growing, or are you going to an industry that's like stagnant or dying? And ideally, you know, if you're an up and coming entrepreneur, you want to go to where the opportunity is. With that, there's also some risk as well because it's not as defined and you never know will the industry die. Just like how, you know, crypto and Web3 at one point, everybody was buying Bitcoin and Ethereum and all this stuff, and NFTs was the thing. And then suddenly it just like hardcore just crashed, right? And so that's an example of like, yeah, you could have made a lot of money, and then, but if you continue to stick through it, well, you have to understand the industry is going to crash and there's not going to be as much money flowing in there. So there's risk, right? But there also is reward. So pick your industry carefully, because whatever you pick, you want to be the best in your industry anyways. And so make sure it's something that you enjoy, something that makes money, something that's actually growing, and you get this trifecta, and hopefully you will be successful. Okay, now the next tip I have for you as an entrepreneur is that the greatest skill, in my personal opinion, is learning how to learn, right? Because when you are starting out in your entrepreneurial journey or business journey, what you realize is that you have some skills and you can apply them to the market, you can generate value. But the thing is, if you want to continue to keep growing and scale and hire different people and all these things, you're going to have to learn new skills. And you might be asking, okay, well, which skill do I learn? It doesn't really matter. It just depends on what is important in the situation. But the real skill that everyone should develop is the skill of learning how to learn and have fun learning as well. So for me, for example, right, I started my career graduating from school, not having many skills, going into Oracle, learning how to sell. From there, once I learned how to sell, the next skill I learned was learning how to make content for things like YouTube, like video content, right? Because there's hundreds of thousands of salespeople out there, maybe millions of salespeople out there, right? But how many of them actually know how to do YouTube? Now it's like less than 1%. So it's like when you start stacking skills and you combining things in different ways, well, you can be a B2B salesperson teaching sales like a coach on YouTube. And there's literally like only like 10 of us in the entire YouTube platform, which is ridiculous, right? So learning new skills is going to be the most important, because even after I learned the skill of creating videos. Then I had to learn the skill of learning how to coach, then learning how to create digital programs like online courses, right? And then the list goes on and on and on, from hiring, doing marketing, training other people. And even now I'm constantly learning new skills. Learning how to learn is probably the most important thing, because no matter what business you're in, there's going to be new challenges. And if you want to reach new heights, whether it's generating more income and revenue for your business, you have to become almost like a different person. You have to be a whole different animal in order to reach those levels that you're looking for. Okay, so the next tip we have for you when it comes to entrepreneurial tips is that your reputation is everything. So here's what I've learned personally just on my entrepreneurial journey. In the beginning, it's actually very hard to get your first customers because, one, nobody knows who you are. You don't have any social proof. It's very difficult, right? You have to convince the person like, hey, I'm not a scam, essentially. But what ends up happening is that when you deliver results, let's say, for example, you're teaching B2B sales like I am, when people see that they actually get results, they get like tech sales jobs and they start making an income, then there's like positive word of mouth that spreads. So they tell their friend like, hey man, you got to check out this guy, Patrick. He's actually legit. He used to work at these places and he has a YouTube channel, right? So now it's easier for me to acquire a customer because I have some kind of brand reputation. The more brand reputation you have, the less people think and the more they buy because they trust you. So when you are, doing sales or you're an entrepreneur, the most important part really is like whatever product or service you're offering, you have to make sure that it's good. When you have a good product and service and the person who buys it, right, which gives you money in exchange of value, they buy your thing and they love the product and service that you have, they're going to tell a friend. And that's priceless because that is proving to the market that whatever it is that you have, whatever it is that you're promising, it actually works. So that when another person hears about it, they're like, oh, if it works for John, it's going to work for me. So they're going to buy from you, right? So having a clean reputation or a reputation filled with social proof, proving that you actually provide the things that you promise, is going to be major, right? And even in my career now, especially on the whole like crypto and Web3 side, which I spend a lot of my time in, in the beginning, I literally was an outsider, nobody just like anybody else. But as I helped a lot of people when it comes to sales and marketing for their projects, I built somewhat of a reputation. So when somebody meets me and they say, hey, like, who are some people you worked with? I just name a couple companies. They're like, oh my God, I know those companies. Really? I'm friends with that guy. And so now they're much more likely to want to work with me because of my reputation in the space. So that is powerful. It takes a long time to build a reputation, but it's very easy to kill. So you always want to make sure you deliver on the results that you promise. And now the next tip that I have for you is that you want to learn how to steal like an artist. So I actually got this framework of thinking from the book Steal Like an Artist, which is written by this guy, Austin Kleon. But essentially, the gist of the book and what the value I got from it is that nothing in this world is original, right? So in the whole like marketing space and especially in the crypto space, for me, I do a lot of creative work, helping a lot of projects with some of the creative assets and basically making things look cool, right? And the way to do this is like, it's not as if I just come up with something and I'm like, oh, you got to do this because I'm just a genius. It's not like that. It's more like I'm referencing from other sources, right? You look in the past from what was popular in the 70s, the 80s, what were people doing over here? And you're seeing like, okay, how can I remix this? How can I have a fresh take to it and make it really relevant for today? So once I actually adopted that mentality that nothing is original, then you start like learning, you start copying at first, right? Because you want to learn how someone does it. And then you start innovating on top of that. I think people who are like, oh, I'm not going to do that because it's not original, it's hard for them to learn because they're not referencing. Referencing is one of the most important skills. Obviously, you're not shamelessly copying. You're just like copy paste. You don't want to do that. You want to learn how somebody does something, learn the bits of it of like why it works, try to do it yourself, like privately, like don't put out the work, right? Just prove to yourself that you can do it. And then from there, innovate on top of it, add like one little twist that makes it completely new. Looked at like some of the artists like Virgil Abloh, who was the creative director of Louis Vuitton, and he did Off-White, the clothing brand. If you watch some of his speeches, which they're available on YouTube, his whole strategy is like he'll just take something from the past, literally change it by 1% and call it new, right? And it's not stealing because nothing in this world is original. It's really just taking inspiration from it, innovating on top of, right? And you can apply that to creative skill sets. You can apply that to B2B sales, for example, right? For example, if you were to study, sales trainers from 1980s, right? You could probably take some bits of information or techniques and strategies that they applied in the 80s, and it would probably still work today, right? If you ever read the book like How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, that's a book that's like decades old, but still the fundamental principles in that book still apply today. Once you start understanding like the fundamentals of things, it doesn't matter if you're learning from someone like today or you're learning from the past. Actually, in the past might be better because it proves that something's actually timeless. Then you want to just repurpose it and do it for today. That's one of the greatest skills, right? Because if we are learning how to learn is very important, right? So it's like copying, mimicking, taking inspiration from, and innovating on top of, and then also having that mindset of like you're stealing like an artist, right? You're not like blatantly copying, but you're innovating on top of, then you're basically like dangerous entrepreneur, because you can literally learn anything. You're not like straight up copying people, and you're innovating on top of what already existed. Those are going to be some of the most important lessons I've learned as an entrepreneur. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, and I'm going to see you in the next one.